I built my tech startup from nothing, pouring every ounce of my soul into creating something meaningful. The healthcare management system I designed was revolutionary, and with Trevor by my side, we were unstoppable. We complemented each other perfectly, my technical expertise and his business savvy. The late nights coding, the sacrifices, the shared dreams, all worth it as we watched our company grow. I never saw it coming. How could someone I trusted so completely betray me so thoroughly? Before I tell you how my own business partner stole everything I built, drop a comment letting me know where you are watching from. Hit that subscribe button if you have ever trusted someone who did not deserve it. My journey began in a small town in Ohio, where I grew up with big dreams but limited resources. From the age of 12, I was fascinated by computers and how they could solve real-world problems. My parents supported my interests, but could only afford a second-hand desktop computer that I constantly upgraded with parts from the local electronics recycling center. After graduating with a computer science degree from Ohio State, I moved to Seattle with $3,000 in savings, a duffel bag of clothes, and an idea that would not let me sleep. I believed healthcare systems were unnecessarily complicated and prone to errors. Patients were suffering because information was siloed, and medical professionals were burning out from administrative burdens. I wanted to create something that would integrate seamlessly across platforms, prioritize patient care, and reduce administrative work. During the day, I worked as a junior developer at a small software company. At night, I coded in my studio apartment, surviving on instant ramen and determination. I rented a desk at a co-working space on weekends, slowly building connections in the Seattle tech scene. The system I envisioned would use machine learning to predict patient needs, streamline documentation, and create intuitive interfaces for both healthcare workers and patients. I called it MediFlow, a play on the idea of medical information flowing effortlessly through the healthcare ecosystem. The early prototype showed promise, but I knew I needed help with the business side to turn my vision into reality. That is when I met Trevor Williams. It was at a tech networking event in downtown Seattle, one of those meetups where ambitious entrepreneurs share ideas over craft beer and pretzels. Trevor stood out immediately tall, confident with a smile that put everyone at ease. While I awkwardly clutched my business cards, he worked the room like he owned it. "That is an interesting concept," he said, approaching me after I had given my elevator pitch to a disinterested investor. "Have you considered how you will navigate the healthcare privacy regulations?" His question showed genuine understanding of the challenges I faced. We ended up talking until the venue staff started stacking chairs around us. Trevor had an MBA from Stanford and had already helped launch 2 successful startups. His knowledge of venture capital and business development complemented my technical expertise perfectly. Our coffee meetings became a regular thing. We would meet at a small cafe near Pike Place Market, discussing healthcare trends and technology developments. Trevor asked insightful questions that helped me refine my concept. He seemed genuinely excited about MediFlow's potential to transform healthcare. "Wade, you are thinking too small," he told me, one rainy afternoon. "This could revolutionize how healthcare data is managed globally. You need someone who understands scaling and investment to take this where it deserves to go." After 3 months of these meetings, Trevor proposed a partnership. He would bring his business acumen and connections, handle the marketing and investment side, while I focused on product development. We would be equal partners, 50-50. Looking back, I should have been more cautious, but his enthusiasm was infectious. "We are going to change healthcare forever," he said, raising his coffee cup in a toast when I agreed to the partnership. The following months were a whirlwind of productivity. We worked from my apartment, transforming my living room into a makeshift office. I coded until sunrise while Trevor crafted business plans and reached out to his network. We complemented each other perfectly. I was the technical visionary and he was the business strategist who could translate my ideas into terms investors understood. Our breakthrough came when Trevor secured a meeting with Horizon Health, a mid-sized hospital management company looking to modernize their systems. The night before the presentation, we rehearsed until we could deliver it in our sleep. Trevor handled the business aspects while I demonstrated the technical capabilities. The Horizon executives were impressed enough to sign on as our first major client. With that contract secured, we moved into a small office in South Lake Union. It was nothing fancy, just 4 walls and reliable internet, but it felt like a palace compared to my apartment. We hired 2 junior developers and began expanding the team. The night we signed the Horizon deal, Trevor took me to an upscale restaurant overlooking Elliott Bay. As we raised our glasses to success, I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude for having found such a perfect business partner. To Metaflow, Trevor said, his glass clinking against mine. And to the beginning of something extraordinary. If only I had known it was also the beginning of the end. The first signs of trouble were subtle. 6 months into our partnership, I noticed small discrepancies in our financial reports. Client payments that should have been allocated to development were mysteriously redirected to business development expenses with minimal documentation. When I asked Trevor about these discrepancies, he always had a plausible explanation. That money went to the conference in Boston where I met with potential investors, he would say. Or those funds covered the legal consultations for our international expansion. His explanations made sense on the surface, but something felt off. I told myself I was just being paranoid, that my lack of business experience was making me unnecessarily suspicious. Things changed more noticeably when Trevor hired Jessica Blackwell as our head of operations without consulting me. Jessica came from a prestigious consulting firm and had an impressive resume, but I was unsettled by the way she and Trevor seemed to have an unspoken understanding from day one. Jessica has experience scaling healthcare startups, Trevor explained when I questioned his unilateral decision. We are lucky to have her. Within weeks, I found myself excluded from key meetings. Strategy sessions would be rescheduled at the last minute to times when I was scheduled to be working with clients. Important decisions about our company direction were made without my input and presented to me as fait accompli. The moment that truly raised my alarm bells came during a meeting with a potential investor named Daniel Kingsley. While reviewing our business structure, Daniel asked a strange question. So, to clarify, who holds the majority ownership of the intellectual property behind Metaflow? Before I could answer that it was jointly owned by Trevor and me, Trevor smoothly interjected, the ownership structure is a bit complex, but rest assured all legal protections are in place. On the drive back to the office, I confronted Trevor about his vague answer. You were deep in the technical questions, Wade, he said dismissively. I did not want to confuse the conversation with legal details. That night I could barely sleep. Was I being paranoid? Or was Trevor deliberately misrepresenting our partnership? I wanted to believe in the friend who had helped build my dream, but the evidence was mounting that something was wrong. As Metaflow grew, Trevor began traveling more frequently for what he called business development opportunities. He would be gone for days at a time, returning with vague stories about potential partnerships and investors that never seemed to materialize into anything concrete. While he was jet-setting across the country, I remained in Seattle, heads down in product development. Our office had expanded to a full floor in a downtown building with 20 employees now. Despite this growth, I felt increasingly isolated. Trevor had hired several of his former colleagues from previous ventures, creating an inner circle that excluded me from the day-to-day operations of the company I had founded. My girlfriend Amanda noticed the toll it was taking on me. One night after I spent hours venting about being sidelined in my own company, she asked the question that had been lurking in the back of my mind. Wade, do you think Trevor might be setting you up? What do you mean, I asked, though I knew exactly what she was suggesting. It sounds like he is systematically pushing you out of decision-making while taking control of the business relationships. Have you checked what he is doing with all that travel and those private meetings? Her words crystallized my fears. The next day, while working late, I discovered several digital folders on our shared drive that were password-protected folders I should have had access to as co-founder. When I asked our IT administrator about them, he seemed uncomfortable. Those were created by Jessica. She said they contained sensitive financial information for the upcoming Series B funding. My suspicions now fully aroused, I decided to investigate. One night after everyone had left the office, I used my administrative access to examine Trevor's company computer. What I found made my blood run cold. There were dozens of emails between Trevor and Jessica discussing restructuring and transition planning. The language was carefully vague, but the implications were clear. More damning were documents outlining a parallel company called HealthStream, with product specifications virtually identical to Metaflow. My hands shaking. I forwarded key emails to my personal account. Then I did something I never thought I would do. I hired a private investigator named Marcus Reeves. Marcus was a former corporate security specialist, recommended by a college friend. His services were not cheap, but I needed to know what was happening behind my back. Over the next 2 weeks, Marcus followed Trevor to meetings that were never mentioned in his calendar. He photographed Trevor having lunch with executives from Meridian Healthcare, our biggest competitor. Most alarmingly, Marcus discovered that Trevor had registered several trademarks and patents related to our technology under his name alone. Each new discovery felt like a physical blow. The person I trusted most in the business world was systematically stealing my company from under me. The betrayal was so calculated, so methodical, that it left me reeling. Nights became a torturous cycle of anger, disbelief, and planning my next move. After gathering enough evidence, I requested a private meeting with Trevor. We sat in our conference room, the one with the motivational quote about teamwork that now seemed like a cruel joke. "I know about HealthStream," I said, sliding printouts of his emails across the table. "I know about the patents you filed without my knowledge." Trevor did not even flinch. Instead, he leaned back in his chair, studying me with the detached interest of someone observing an insect. "Wade, these are contingency plans. Every smart business needs them. Contingency plans that exclude the co-founder patents for technology. I created filed under your name only." He sighed as if dealing with a difficult child. "You are a brilliant developer, Wade. But business requires a different kind of intelligence. The investors need stability, and your erratic behavior lately has been concerning." Erratic behavior? I was stunned. "What are you talking about?" "The late nights, the paranoia, the way you question decisions made by experienced executives like Jessica. Several team members have expressed concerns about your mental state." I realized then what was happening. Trevor was gaslighting me, laying groundwork to question my stability. He was creating a narrative where I was the problem that needed to be removed for the company's success. The following day, a company-wide email from Trevor expressed concerns about leadership stability and announced an executive committee meeting to ensure Mediflow's continued success during this challenging time. Without naming me directly, the message clearly positioned me as a liability to the company I had created. Within days, people who had been friendly colleagues began avoiding me. Conversations would stop when I entered rooms. My suggestions in development meetings were met with uncomfortable silence or quick dismissals. Trevor had successfully isolated me within my own company. My final awakening came on a Monday morning when my keycard failed to open the main entrance. The security guard, a man named Pete who had always greeted me by name, now looked uncomfortable. "I am sorry, Mr. Lawrence. Your access has been temporarily suspended. I am supposed to escort you to collect your personal items." Stunned, I followed Pete to my office where Jessica was waiting with a cardboard box containing my personal effects and a manila envelope. "The board has called an emergency meeting regarding your position," she explained with rehearsed sympathy. "In the meantime, your access to company property and systems has been restricted." The envelope contained legal documents, indicating that the board, which now consisted primarily of Trevor's appointees, had voted to suspend me, pending a review of concerning behavior that may be detrimental to company operations. As security escorted me from the building I had once proudly entered as a founder, I checked my phone to find my company email already deactivated. Later that day, I learned from a sympathetic colleague that Trevor had convinced our investors I was experiencing mental health issues that made me a liability. The final piece of the puzzle fell into place when my lawyer informed me that Trevor had indeed patented key aspects of our technology under his name, claiming to be the sole inventor. He had been planning this coup for months, maybe, from the beginning of our partnership. I had been completely outmaneuvered, betrayed by someone I had trusted implicitly, and systematically pushed out of my own company. The realization left me hollow, questioning not just my judgment, but my worth as an entrepreneur and a person. The weeks following my removal from Metaflow were the darkest of my life. I retreated to my apartment, ignoring calls from friends and colleagues. The blinds stayed drawn. Sleep became elusive, and when it came, it brought nightmares of betrayal that left me more exhausted than before. My relationship with Amanda suffered as I withdrew into myself. She tried to be supportive, but my anger and depression created a wall between us. "You need to talk to someone, Wade," she pleaded after I declined yet another dinner invitation. "This isolation is not helping you." But I could not bear the thought of socializing, of explaining how thoroughly I had been deceived and defeated. My identity had been so wrapped up in Metaflow that without it I felt purposeless. The financial strain added practical worries to my emotional turmoil. My savings were dwindling and legal consultations were expensive. My health deteriorated as well. I lost 15 pounds, developed insomnia, and experienced frequent panic attacks. The stress manifested physically in persistent headaches and a constant knot in my stomach. The entrepreneur who had once bounded out of bed at 5 in the morning now struggled to find a reason to get up at all. The turning point came unexpectedly. One Sunday after Amanda had left for a weekend trip with friends, a trip I should have joined, I forced myself to go hiking at Mount Rainier. The physical exertion and the solitude of the mountain trails provided the first moments of clarity I had experienced since my ousting. Standing on a ridge overlooking the vast wilderness, a realization struck me. By giving up, I was completing the victory Trevor had started. I was allowing him to take not just my company, but my spirit. The mountain's enduring presence reminded me that some things cannot be stolen: my intelligence, my creativity, my capacity to rebuild. That night I wrote down everything I knew about Trevor's actions, creating a timeline of the betrayal. The act of organizing the information transformed my helpless anger into strategic determination. Trevor had won the first battle, but the war was far from over. The next morning I contacted Sarah Hamilton, an attorney specializing in intellectual property and corporate fraud. Her office was in a converted warehouse in Pioneer Square, with exposed brick walls and a no-nonsense atmosphere that matched her reputation. "So, you got screwed," she said after listening to my story. "It happens more than you would think in tech startups. The question is, what are you going to do about it?" Her bluntness was exactly what I needed. For the next 3 hours we dissected Trevor's actions, identifying legal vulnerabilities in his scheme. "He made some mistakes," Sarah noted. "Filing patents without acknowledging the original creator is fraud. The timing of your prototype development versus his patent applications creates a clear paper trail. And if he misrepresented ownership to investors, that is securities fraud." For the first time in weeks, I felt a spark of hope. There was a path forward, difficult and uncertain, but possible. Sarah helped me understand that my greatest advantage was Trevor's overconfidence. He believed I was too broken to fight back, too defeated to challenge him. This underestimation would be his downfall. With Sarah's guidance, I reached out to Dylan Foster, a former developer who had left Mediflow shortly after Trevor hired Jessica. Over coffee, Dylan revealed that he had quit because of ethical concerns. "Trevor asked me to backdate some development documentation," Dylan confessed. "When I refused, Jessica suggested my role was becoming redundant." Dylan was not the only one with stories. As I carefully reconnected with former colleagues, a pattern emerged of Trevor's manipulative behavior. Several were willing to provide statements about questionable practices they had witnessed. Meanwhile, Sarah's team made a breakthrough by retrieving archived code repositories that contained timestamps and author signatures, proving I was the original creator of Mediflow's core technology. These digital breadcrumbs created an irrefutable timeline that contradicted Trevor's patent claims. Most surprisingly, we discovered that Mediflow was not Trevor's first heist. At his previous companies, similar patterns had emerged, joining promising startups, gradually taking control, and eventually pushing out founders. He had settled 2 lawsuits confidentially, which had kept his tactics from becoming widely known. Armed with mounting evidence, we began building our counter-strategy. Each piece of documentation was carefully preserved and authenticated. Each witness statement was recorded and notarized. We were creating not just a legal case, but a narrative of truth that would be difficult to dispute. I also focused on meticulous documentation of all current communications. Every email, text, and phone call was logged and saved. Sarah advised me to use only secure channels for sensitive discussions about the case, knowing that Trevor likely still had connections who might alert him to my activities. With sufficient evidence compiled, we began reaching out to key investors who had backed Mediflow. Many were reluctant to get involved in what they saw as a founders' dispute, but a few were concerned enough about potential fraud to agree to meetings. Martin Goldstein, our first major angel investor, was particularly receptive. "I invested in your vision, Wade," he said after reviewing our evidence. "If what you are showing me is accurate, this represents a serious breach of fiduciary duty." Simultaneously, I cultivated a relationship with Taylor Jenkins, a technology journalist known for in-depth investigations of startup culture. Without revealing our full strategy, I provided Taylor with enough information to pique interest in the broader issue of founder exploitation in tech startups. As a precaution, I created comprehensive backups of all development history, including proof-of-concept demos that predated my partnership with Trevor. These were stored securely, with trusted third parties ensuring they could not be altered or destroyed. Perhaps most valuable was the support I received from former clients who had worked directly with me during Mediflow's early days. Dr. Plest, Eleanor Simmons, Chief of Medical Informatics at Horizon Health, provided a powerful statement about my role as the visionary behind the technology. In all our early discussions, it was clear that Wade was the creative force behind Mediflow, her statement read. The solutions to our most challenging implementation issues came directly from him. With Sarah's guidance, we developed a multi-pronged strategy combining legal action, investor pressure, and carefully managed media coverage. The goal was not just to reclaim what was rightfully mine, but to expose Trevor's pattern of fraudulent behavior. The turning point came unexpectedly. Tech Insider, a respected industry publication, published a detailed investigation titled "The Serial Startup Hijacker," featuring accounts from entrepreneurs across multiple companies who had experienced similar treatment from Trevor. Though we had not provided information for the article, the journalist had independently uncovered Trevor's pattern of behavior at 3 previous startups. The article sent shockwaves through the investment community. Major investors in Mediflow, concerned about both the ethical implications and the potential financial and reputational damage, demanded an independent investigation into Trevor's activities and the company's governance. Trevor attempted to dismiss the article as disgruntled former employees with an agenda, but his defense rang hollow as more evidence emerged. When he tried to accelerate a sale of Mediflow to a larger competitor, likely hoping to cash out before the full truth emerged, the board finally intervened, freezing all major transactions pending the investigation. The independent investigators quickly uncovered what we already knew. Trevor had systematically misrepresented ownership of intellectual property, misled investors about the company's structure, and potentially committed securities fraud. 2 weeks later, I was invited to present my evidence directly to the board. Walking into the Mediflow conference room, the same room where Trevor had gaslighted me months earlier, I felt a strange calm. No longer the betrayed victim, I was now the prosecutor, with an airtight case. For 4 hours, I methodically presented documentation, witness statements, and technical evidence, proving my role as the original creator of Mediflow's technology. The board members asked pointed questions, but as the presentation continued, their skepticism gave way to concern, and then outrage. Trevor's counterclaims about my mental instability backfired when we presented statements from my healthcare providers confirming my excellent mental health prior to the betrayal, along with expert opinions attributing my subsequent distress to the trauma of professional betrayal rather than any pre-existing condition. 3 days later, I received the call I had been fighting for. The board had voted to reinstate me and suspend Trevor pending further legal investigation. When I walked back into the Mediflow offices, many of the employees who had been manipulated into doubting me greeted me with applause and relief. The nightmare was not over, but the tide had decisively turned. The legal consequences for Trevor unfolded gradually but definitively. The board's investigation revealed additional layers of deception, including misappropriated funds and falsified business expenses. Criminal charges for fraud and embezzlement followed, resulting in a plea deal that included financial restitution and a ban from serving as an officer in publicly traded companies. Rebuilding Metaflow required more than just removing Trevor. The company culture had been poisoned by his influence with fear and political maneuvering, replacing the collaborative spirit we had once enjoyed. Jessica and several other executives who had been complicit in Trevor's scheme resigned rather than face termination. I implemented a new governance structure with transparent decision-making processes and ethical safeguards. The board was reconstituted with members committed to proper oversight, including Dr. Eleanor Simmons, who brought valuable perspective as both a healthcare professional and a woman of integrity. Trust must be rebuilt, systematically, I explained during our first all-hands meeting after my return. Not through words, but through consistent actions and transparency. We established an ethics committee with representatives from all levels of the company, created clear channels for reporting concerns without fear of retaliation, and implemented regular external audits of our business practices. Most importantly, we refocused on our original mission, creating technology that improved healthcare outcomes for patients and reduced burnout for providers. My approach to leadership evolved from the experience. I became more discerning about the character of those I brought into leadership positions, valuing integrity and transparency over impressive resumes or charismatic personalities. Every new executive hire underwent rigorous background checks and extensive interviews focused on ethical scenarios. To my surprise, the company thrived under this new approach. Without the distraction of Trevor's hidden agendas, we were able to accelerate product development and strengthen client relationships. 18 months after my return, Metaflow secured a major contract with the largest hospital system in the Northwest, validating our renewed focus on genuine healthcare improvements rather than just growth metrics. On a personal level, my relationship with Amanda had suffered during the crisis but ultimately emerged stronger. She had seen me at my lowest and stayed offering support without enabling self-pity. During the rebuilding phase, she became my most trusted sounding board, often providing perspective I missed when too close to a situation. "The difference between you and Trevor," she told me one evening as we celebrated a company milestone, "is that you never lost sight of why you built Metaflow in the first place. It was never just about success for you. It was about creating something meaningful." Her words highlighted an important truth: betrayal had not changed my fundamental values. If anything, the experience had refined them, burning away any lingering naivety while leaving my core purpose intact. The journey from victim to victor transformed me in unexpected ways. The depression and self-doubt that had once consumed me gave way to a more grounded confidence. I had been tested in fire and emerged stronger, with a deeper understanding of both business realities and human nature. This new perspective led me to establish a mentorship program for first-time founders. Once a month, I hosted workshops on business ethics and protective legal structures, helping young entrepreneurs avoid the pitfalls I had experienced. These sessions became unexpectedly fulfilling, transforming my painful experience into valuable lessons for others. "Document everything from day one" became my mantra for these founders. Trust is essential, but verification is prudent. Many expressed surprise at my willingness to revisit such a painful chapter, but I found that sharing my experience drained it of its power to hurt me. What had once been a source of shame became a source of wisdom I could pass on. Perhaps the most unexpected outcome was how the experience changed my relationship with success itself. Before the betrayal, I had measured achievement primarily through growth metrics and financial milestones. Now I recognized that true success included creating an environment where people could do meaningful work with dignity and security. This philosophy extended beyond Metaflow's walls. We established a foundation supporting ethical innovation in healthcare, focusing particularly on startups addressing underserved communities. The work of this foundation eventually became as fulfilling to me as Metaflow itself. 3 years after regaining control of my company, I was invited to deliver a keynote address at the same tech conference where I had first met Trevor. Standing on that stage, looking out at hundreds of aspiring entrepreneurs, I reflected on the journey that had brought me there. Building a successful company is not just about innovative ideas or market fit, I told the audience. It is about creating something that reflects your values and serves a genuine purpose. Protect that purpose fiercely because there will always be those who see only the profit potential and not the human impact. The betrayal that once threatened to destroy me had instead revealed my true resilience. I learned that while trust is necessary for any meaningful venture, it must be coupled with appropriate boundaries and verification. I discovered that character matters more than credentials, and that true strength often emerges only when we are tested beyond what we believe we can endure. Most importantly, I found that even the most painful experiences can become the foundation for something meaningful. The vulnerability created by betrayal ultimately opened me to deeper connections with those who proved worthy of trust. The self-doubt forced me to reconnect with my original purpose, strengthening rather than weakening my resolve. In business and in life, our greatest challenges often reveal our true strength. When everything you have built is threatened, you discover what cannot be taken from you: your resilience, your integrity, your capacity to begin again with wisdom that can only be earned through adversity. Have you ever experienced betrayal in your professional or personal life? How did you handle it? And what lessons did you learn? Drop your experiences in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to hear more real-life journeys of overcoming adversity. And remember to hit that share button. Your support helps these stories reach others who might be facing similar challenges and need to know they are not alone. Thank you for listening, and remember, sometimes losing what you built leads to building something better than you ever imagined possible.